We've had news today, the latest strike news, that 1,000 baggage handlers at Gatwick Airport are planning to walk out for 8 days over the summer holidays, which of course will mean a certain amount of chaos for people who are trying to get on holiday or off on business. At the moment, of course, we have junior doctors on strike in England, with consultants set to walk out next week, and there's another train strike coming this week, and ambulance workers, actors, even in Hollywood we have the actors and writers. Nearly everyone is affected by other people's strikes in some way. And there's obviously sometimes a question as to whether you can get any redress. Joseph Kotrie-Monson is a lawyer and broadcaster, now director of the Mary Monson law firm, which in the 1980s represented striking miners. I want in a moment to talk more widely about strikes and unions, but can I just ask you whether the public end up with any rights in these disputes? I mean, for example, in the Gatwick case, the deal isn't with the airlines. The deal is with the airlines, not with the baggage handlers, but it's the airlines we've given our money to. Is there any redress for passengers?
Yeah, well, I think you're straight to the relevant point here. And first of all, may I say good afternoon, and my sympathy is with all people who look forward to hope to look forward to a summer holiday in what appears to be a real summer of discontent. With regard to the rights that people have, historically, it's unsurprising, isn't it, that airlines fighting for survival in changing times have historically they have fought tooth and nail to make sure that they are the circumstances in which they have to provide refunds, that dreaded word for an airline, are limited. A 2018 European Court of Justice case, still relevant to us because it's pre-2021. Remember, we left the EU at the end of December the previous year, said that an airline strike is not force majeure. Force majeure, something akin to, but not quite the same as, think of an act of God, circumstances, grand circumstances outside the control of the airline. However, you're right. This is about baggage handlers. It's not about flight attendants. It's not about pilots, employees of Ryanair, Lufthansa, and the rest. Airlines may well say that airport strikes are similarly, as they argued before, outside their control and therefore not eligible for refund. There isn't a question as to how different airlines will deal with it, of course, because some airlines have shown a more bullish approach in their attitude to whether they are prepared to give a refund, or whether PR is such an issue for them that they're prepared to take it across their very broad backs. It's kind of a question of whether this is a PR or a legal issue and which way the airline seeks to go. As I said, Ryanair, for example, historically aggressive on these points. Many low-cost, low-margin airlines, understandably, may well take a similar view.
Indeed. Can we go to look at the wider picture? Because, I mean, we are in this situation with rail and tube and doctors and teachers and NHS. There's sort of a bit of political whack-a-mole going on. And if you lived, like me, through the 70s when the big unions were in their pomp, it has sometimes felt as if those days were over since the Thatcher political revolution and the falling membership of unions. Now, I know that your mother and the company that you're in, founded the company you're in, was the lawyer Mary Monson, who represented striking miners in the 1980s. So you must have childhood awareness of the whole ethical business of balancing the right to strike against public interest.
Absolutely. And the workforce developed in power, and it was a necessary function of society in the context of the Industrial Revolution. When people were moved from farms, they were moved from villages. In order to survive, workforces were expected to be in cities where conditions weren't great. The rise of the labor movement, the rise of the state, the necessity to maintain the labour force in conditions that are less benevolent, less clement than living out in the countryside, living in big, smelly, dangerous cities. there is a similarity with the 1970s, and it's perhaps not the most obvious one, but I'll seek to persuade you on this. The 1970s were a period in which British industry was failing, not because of the rights of workers, so goes an argument for some, but the failure of management, of reinvestment, of forward thinking, and the so-called captains of industry, although fat cats might be more accurate, those good old boys who ran industry into the ground through short-sightedness and arrogance, certainly in the car industry that I advise on and I know a great deal about. That is the perceived view. What can we say now about the fact we're having strikes here? The rest of Europe has some, but nothing like this problem. We've had a failure in government with regard to the workforce on this occasion.
Do you think that there's any ethical difficulty now, because strikes do harm a lot of ordinary workers? Now we have such a big gig economy where people actually lose money by not being able to work because of other people's strikes. Does this change the ethics of the right and need to strike?
I think in all those Mick Lynch interviews where he's baited by journalists, it's the first quite aggressive question that's asked. And the reason for that is it's the most effective one. What about all of the other people who will suffer as a result? Well, he may well say, well, my people have a duty in the first instance to feed themselves and their families. They have a human right to withhold their labour. I have to say it's something that when it's described in that way, I have some sympathy with, although it's a question of how you ask the question. If the question is, do we have sympathy for other people who suffer as a result, people who can't get to hospital appointments as a result of cuts in public transport or strikes? Well, of course, that will elicit a different type of answer, won't it? What the unions, I suspect, will say, although of course I don't speak for them, is that the most broad-backed, the organisation or the player in this with the greatest ability for manoeuvring and negotiation and come to the table, our employers, is the government, not the worker who has to feed him or herself and his or her family.
It's the government, yes, absolutely. Do you think, just in a line, do you think unions will ever be as strong as they were in the pre-Thatcher days?
Well, I think not just the legal and regulatory battle was won by Thatcher. We have fairly onerous union laws about the majorities and the level of unanimity required to strike. You can't simply withhold your labour unless it's popularly accepted. But there's also a sense in which the PR and the history battle was won too. Indeed. You know, the question that was framed with regard to the 1970s was about errant workers, and that's usually the way it's framed. No criticism, not about bad management of fat cat industries.
Well, Joseph Kotrie-Monson, thank you for those insights. That's fascinating.